Sami Hamdi is editor-in-chief of the International Interest, and he joins us now live from London. Hi, Sami. So tell me, from your perspective then, what has been the most kind of tangible fallout geopolitically since Khashoggi was killed?
I think we've seen a significant change in attitudes towards Mohammed bin Salman. He's no longer seen as a reformer. It's more a debate now as to how valuable is he as a partner, as an international partner in the fight against Iran, in the fight against extremism, in the fight against these religious influences in the Middle East, and in the push towards liberalism, versus the caveats of human rights abuses and repression that is common in the region. You'll remember Mike Pompeo's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, where he described the necessity of the relationship with Saudi Arabia in order to fulfill American interests in the region. What has been interesting with regards to the fallout after the Jamal Khashoggi case is the spotlight on Yemen, which has pushed Saudi Arabia to pursue more negotiations with the Houthis. It has forced Mohammed bin Salman to change members of his entourage. It has forced Mohammed bin Salman to change his rhetoric towards Turkey. Let's remember that in London he was saying that Turkey is part of an axis of evil that supports extremism, and then in the Davos in the Desert Forum he was saying that nobody can damage Saudi-Turkish relations as long as Mohammed bin Salman is in Saudi Arabia and Erdogan is in Ankara. We've seen him change his tone towards Qatar. Whereas he's been leading the blockade, he said Qatar's economy is doing well, seemingly forgetting the impact that he's had on the Qatari economy and on the geopolitics in the region. It's clear that Mohammed bin Salman feels rattled. However, I think at the current stage of events, I think he feels he can actually escape the pressure, and it looks like he may well do so.
You know, it is important to note as well that in spite of the promising reforms that our reporter mentioned there that may keep him in the position he's in, he was also behind some extremely controversial events. I mean, not least the blockade of Qatar that you even spoke about, but more bizarrely, the shock resignation of Lebanese Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri while al-Hariri was in Saudi. Do you think that's kind of been forgotten, because it was arguably the most highly indicative sign of very risky behavior that MBS is capable of?
I think we're looking at the region from the perspective of trying to look at it from an outsider perspective. But when you look at it from the perspective of the US and Saudi Arabia, these events are looked at in a very different light. For example, the Saad al-Hariri incident took place when an alliance between Hezbollah and the Maronite Christians became so solid that Saudi Arabia felt its influence was about to be ousted. So they forced Hezbollah into a position by imprisoning al-Hariri. They forced Hezbollah in a position either take all of Lebanon and incur the ire of the international community, or back off and let Hariri form a government. So I think the US looked at it from this perspective, which is why they didn't call him some madman or a man who was taking knee-jerk reactions, and why they allowed Emmanuel Macron to take the credit for solving the crisis. I think what we have to understand when we're analyzing Khashoggi and analyzing the Middle East is the perspective with which the US looks at it. The US sees it from the angle of Iran. It sees Iranian influence in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen. For Saudi Arabia, it sees Iran in the north, it sees Iran in the east, it sees Iran in the south. For the US, this is the prime interest. The same for the Israelis. Let's remember, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is one of the main lobbyists for Mohammed bin Salman in Washington. He essentially said Saudi Arabia should be given a pass for what happened to Khashoggi. This is why I think with the Khashoggi case, if we're looking for legal justice, it probably won't come. People will find a lot of difficulty in proving that Mohammed bin Salman himself ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. But if we're looking for political justice, we've seen Mohammed bin Salman reeling back on some of the actions that he's taken place. We've seen Turkey come out of isolation after Donald Trump tried to put heavy pressure via tariffs and via sanctions. We've seen the Qataris now emerge as this economic power despite the blockade. We've seen Mohammed bin Salman reel back on antagonistic rhetoric. We've seen Saud al-Qahtani be ousted. We've seen General Asiri been ousted. We've seen the entourage change in Saudi Arabia. We've seen discussions of power being devolved from Mohammed bin Salman, something that would have been unthinkable beforehand. If we're looking for justice on the political front, Khashoggi has definitely made an impact. I think in this very unjust world that we live in, this very cruel world, we need to slightly lower our standards a bit when we're analyzing accountability.
Okay. Sami Hamdi, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, as always, live from London.